Well, I think we live in a bubble about this whole issue about a lot of women being in tech because we have access. A lot of women don't have access. They also don't have the digital knowledge about where to go and even access like basic information about such things, you know. And so while a lot of us, you know, have been trying to get a lot of women into the space, still a lot of them, especially young girls in universities and high school, they go through the most because most of us are vocal. So a lot of people who would come for me, for instance, online, they don't have their real IDs because, you know, they just can't. But for most of these girls, anyone can actually go for them and they don't know how to defend themselves. So even though a lot of them, you know, are doing a lot of things in technology, a lot of women are still excluded from the digital economy. And that gives, especially now that a lot of us, you know, are trying to get into the digital economy, a lot of them are left out. And that will continue to be so unless we work on accessibility and especially affordability of internet for these women. And also focus on, you know, digital literacy. It's very important. You know, things about financial inclusion, for instance. What does it mean to take a loan? When you default, what happens? Most of them are not informed about these things. You just told, okay, download all these apps. You can access credit whenever you need it, and they do. But then all of them end up in this in the CRB list. They don't know the consequences of being in this list. Once they, you know, they have bank accounts and they want to open and get loans, they can't do that. So in as much as technology is helping us move ahead, it's also making us move further from people who didn't have access initially.
Right, Lauren, so thoughts on technology, law, intersection, access and inclusion?
I think one of the really interesting points about gender and tech actually goes back to one of the Sustainable Development Goals, which unlike the Millennium Development Goals, the SDGs are for every country in the world, not just the developing world. And that's one of the big differences in the generation of them. And I find it really interesting that the gender SDG references straight up top that technology will play a role in gender equality in the next 10 years. And yet we're looking at a situation in Silicon Valley where only about 23% of developers are female, only about 7% of VCs are female. So tech is just not being designed for women. If you look at design, even down to the design of mobile phones, they're mostly designed to be too big for women's hands, to easily accomplish what a man can accomplish at the same time. And it's because mostly design is done with the average male in mind rather than the average female. This is all covered, by the way, in a truly fantastic book that everybody who's interested in tech should read by Caroline Criado Perez about gender bias in digital and in data. And it's truly fantastic. I highly recommend it for everyone interested in this space. But I think to bring it back to the topic of the panel on justice, there's two really interesting points about gender and law that I think really all countries in the world should be delving into. The first is how increased access to technology is impacting women being victims of coercive control, and how that can be stopped, and how that can be tracked, and how that can be prosecuted. And the second is how this can be a tool for women to broaden access just to the justice system in general, how we can up reporting of rape, how we can up reporting of sexual harassment, not just how we report it in an online space, but how we can physically use access to justice through technology to greater report and greater prosecute and greater check evidence in physical abuse, in physical rape, in physical sexual assault. And one of the big problems that the United Kingdom is having at the moment is the CPS, the Crown Prosecution Service, the DPP equivalent, is really wanting to prosecute more and more sex crimes, more crimes against women, more instances of rape, and they're coming up against huge difficulties in accessing technology, in how to work with people's mobile phones. If people wipe their phone, how do they get access to the data that they've wiped? how do they broaden the use of the technology as a witness, not as an individual as a witness, but the use of that person's technology as a witness in a case of sexual crimes or coercive control. And it's incredibly difficult to make sure that that technology can stand up in court. And they are so overwhelmed in terms of resources. They do not have the resources to do this. Cases are being dropped left, right, and center. More money needs to go into this so that women are better protected by the justice system, because this is now how abuse and coercive control are being executed in the modern era. And criminal justice systems have to be funded to keep up.
Right. Okay, this is an excellent way to conclude this conversation. Thank you to Lauren, to Sheila, and to Linda for being here, and especially thank you to the two of you for being good sports.